There are some roller coasters that I could sit on all day, and others, I'm one lap off of ending my sorrows. But what makes something so addictive and re-rideable? Obviously, if you're itching to get back into the queue line for something you've just finished, then that's clearly a good start. But how come sometimes we find ourselves going back to roller coasters that are a bit questionable or not enjoyed by the majority? There are coasters all around the world that are unique, interesting, and would get ranked a near perfect score. But if you don't feel like going on it again afterwards, then what's the point? I think a really good example of this is a really intense flat ride. Sometimes even the most immune people can do a flat ride and then think to themselves after, what the actual flip-flop did I just do? And I get it, for some that might be a good thing, as they like to feel the rush of adrenaline. But a majority of the time, it just ends up with them moving on to the next ride, rather than wanting to do it again. Toxicator at Alton Towers received this type of complaint from those that had experienced Talocan at Phantasialand, because it doesn't flip as many times. But I think this was done on purpose, as it means it's more accessible to people, while staying an option for re-riders without needing to take a break in between. So how are rides addictive? Let's start with something a bit more obvious. Restraint type. If a ride is physically uncomfortable, you might find yourself running out of the station and never looking back. Ride roughness is always up to debate, as it depends on a large amount of variables and ride type. Lots of people expect for a wooden roller coaster to be more ragged because of the way that it looks. Put it this way, you'd be more upset if you got hurt on a new shiny roller coaster than this crusty one on its last legs at Brighton. Track length and ride experience actually go both ways. I don't think a shorter ride is a bad thing because it's easier to want to do it again. Sometimes if something's dragged out, it might feel like a pain to wait in a queue for all over again. But on the other hand, if you've waited 2 hours for a 15-second ride experience, you might be sobbing over the thought of your blistered scalp. But don't worry, while sun cream can't fix your pain, I'm sure a £15 Aramark chicken select meal can. Some rides might stay re-rideable for longer because of their weird layout. I can never get used to 13's drop track or Detonator's slam dunk. It just makes you want to run back into the queue line giggling. The Smiler is an intense but exhausting ride, and I find it quite hard to want to redo because of how overwhelming it can be in comparison to something like Nemesis. However, that's not to say that comfort guarantees a good ride, but it certainly does help in re-rideability. Some rides hit the same every time, while others are hit and miss. I think this is true for coasters that provide a different experience each time, like spinning coasters. There's nothing worse than getting on expecting a Beyblade level spin, and then you're faced with the crushing reality that you could have felt more from sticking your head into the toilet and flushing. I didn't notice it the first time I visited, but I found that Polton's Park's rides are very easy to lap due to the combination of less queues and their roller coasters being shorter than usual. As a family-owned park, they don't have the funds to have as many trains on the track or a custom layout as a small indie company like Merlin Entertainment. On-ride or in-station music can definitely add to the general vibe of a ride. Although the true nerds might dislike Wickerman's pre-show as it takes too much time, I couldn't imagine the ride without it, as it adds so much depth to the ride experience. Sound design can quite literally trick your brain into wanting to go for another lap just to hear that iconic line or station soundtrack. You can subconsciously spend the rest of your day replaying it in your head, or even commit to adding it to your playlist. A memorable theme tune definitely makes something more enjoyable. This also plays into the addiction side of things. Theme parks can play on nostalgia and guarantee your return by feeding you something that you want to listen to again. This is definitely the case with things like Disney, as the whole premise is built off of nostalgia, and like it or not, they're very addicting. A good story, soundtrack, and general vibe is just enough to bring back their consumers. You guys already know how addicted I am to Colossus. Just imagine a crocodile levitating whenever they reach the station building. Brand identity plays a huge role in rides, and Alton Towers are by far the best at conveying this. CoasterBot did a really great video discussing this, and I don't want to stay on the subject for too long, but I thought I'd mention it briefly. Think about how many times you've seen other people wear theme park merchandise. This could be out and about or at the parks themselves. Merlin are very clever in the way that they design their brands as easily recognizable as they can. From very simple shapes in comparison to some of the ride signs in America that are big and bold, Alton Towers has quite a minimalistic approach that don't scream roller coasters, meaning that people that might not be into the whole thing are still likely to buy a t-shirt or backpack with the ride logo. The secret weapons, Oblivion, Smiler, Wickerman, Nemesis, 13, Galactica, and even their newest ride Toxicator, can be stripped down and recognized from just one thing. Whether that's a Nemesis eye or the Smiler's color scheme, it all adds up. Feeling a part of a storyline with shows, events, or entertainment can grow an attachment between the consumer and business, making you more likely to enjoy the ride. It's also just free exposure for Merlin. If you wear Saw the Ride merchandise, you'll get about 10 people walking up to you and asking if your spine is still with us. Iconic rides are usually usually the ones that are used on covers for websites, or the ones that look scary. Flashy visuals like Stealth's Top Hat or Oblivion's Drop into the Abyss, whereas an addictive ride is created over a long period of time. Almost like some kind of strange relationship. You become more and more dependable on these rides that you hold so highly. And if somebody comes up to you and is like, you know what, your ride sucks, you're probably going to take personal offense to the insult that they're throwing your way. Even though the roller coaster's not going to owe you anything for doing that. It's not a real person. You know, cheers mate, I could handle myself there, but you know what, that was really nice. Don't tell the Q4 cinematic universe that they don't exist. I don't think they'd be very impressed. A constant slam of forces can be great for marketing teams, as it looks good on paper. Addictive roller coasters are more about how they feel on board and how it makes you feel. Iconic rides try to impress you before you even get started, whereas an addictive one is something that really clings on to you afterwards. The more laid back rides can usually be the ones that you find yourself coming back for. Some rides are given the best chance of success, but they still fall flat, whether that's because of people setting too high expectations, or it just ends up being a painfully average ride experience. Now, I love Nemesis Reborn deeply, right? It is my sugar plum, my honey darling. But the fact people waited 4 hours for the same ride experience and then complained about it, like you knew what you were waiting for, no? But most of the time, ride types are built with expectations. On a multi-launch coaster, you're more likely to find airtime, while on a B&M, you know your face is going to cosplay a scream mask by dislocating your jaw. Either way, if you expect something and it doesn't happen, you're less likely to want to do it again. And this is why blissful ignorance is the best course of action. I find if you don't listen to people and try things for yourself, it's easier to come up with your own opinions, as there's no pushback against it. Just because a ride checks all the boxes, it doesn't mean it's going to be successful. And that's just down to the fact that we're all human. Well, most of us. While other parks have their strengths and weaknesses, there isn't a path of righteousness for theme parks, nor is there an explanation as to why we grow attachments to specific ones. So yeah, I'll probably continue to have wild takes, and that's fine by me. I love upsetting people. What ride do you spend too much of your time thinking about? I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this video or I made you laugh, consider checking out some of my other videos, or even subscribe, as there'll be more on the way soon. I hope you guys are all doing well. Take care, nerds.
I nominate Q4 coasters. Q4 coasters.
I have had enough, right? Who the flip-flop nominated me for this? Nominate anybody that personally enjoys Saw the Ride. Yeah, enjoy, mate. To nominate anyone with a postcode, that is anyone with a postcode. Look at this. I hope you're happy. Subscribe, or I unplug your freezer.
Say hi to Fatty. Hi, Fatty.